I posted this tweet, and as you can see, it did the numbers. It did the numbers. Almost 1,000 likes. 37 people who thought they knew better than me. Probably. I haven't really looked at the quote tweets a lot. And 264 retweets. So it was well received. Let's just say that. And the tweet itself is, I'll be honest, it's a little bit instigating. When playing friendlies, you should play to lose. Whoa! Playing to lose? Who wants to lose, right? Not me. The thing is, let's look at some of the critique, right? So I think the biggest point is like what Locust is saying right here. You shouldn't play to win in friendlies, but I wouldn't say that you should play lose. I'd say when playing friendlies, you should have a conscious idea of what you're trying to push your comfort zone on and keep that in the front of your mind as your goal. So I feel like we agree 95% of this, but I feel like the wording is a play to grow or something might be more helpful than trying to play to lose. And it's important for people to consciously reach forward in specific areas. So I actually think this is like kind of missing the point of the tweet. So there's a reason why I called this tweet playing to lose rather than playing to grow. I actually think, like, in this paragraph, it explains it pretty well. Playing to lose is basically talking about a mindset shift. It's not going into a match with the intention to lose, it's going into a match with the intention to figure out what type of results your idea will lead into. In other words, you're trying to see if you can get away with something. You're asking your opponent what the answer is to your action, you're asking them to beat you so you can understand more about what you're doing. In other words, you're trying to lose. I think what this kind of highlights is that the lose in the title of the tweet is not about losing the game. You're not going into friendlies trying to lose games. You're going into friendlies focusing on losing. You're focusing on why you lose. You're focusing on trying to push yourself to the limit to the point where you lose. It's not playing to lose the game. It's playing with a focus on loss. And I think the most important thing that people kind of don't understand and why there's such a overwhelming, or I don't want to say overwhelming, but where there was such a vocal negative party kind of reacting to my tweet, right? Because there was a lot of people who were like, well, this is bad advice. This is stupid. Losing is basically the same as learning, as in the sense that learning doesn't exist without fucking up. And I know, like, I think I've tweeted a tip like this before. Even when you're winning and you're doing something and you realize, hey, this shouldn't be working, so in a sense you're learning without it losing, you know, the information or the idea that shouldn't work is because you lost in that situation before. In other words, you need to lose if you want to learn. And I think that is kind of like the most important thing if we're talking about Smash. Of course, you can learn all about a lot of things theoretically, in the sense that you can say like, oh, well, I know on a theoretical basis that this is good and this is not good, and you can do that without losing, of course. But that knowledge is also basically part of the community because there were people who lost to that before. Do you get what I'm saying? At the end of the day, theory has to be applied still, and because Smash has so many variables, it's hard to apply theory directly to Smash, so there will always be a practical aspect of learning. And that practical learning is done through losing. So anyway, even when you're winning or even when you're not losing and learning because of it, that information came because someone lost when doing that stuff, right? So someone lost because they were too aggressive. Basically what I'm advising you to do is you take something and you try to push it as far as you can to the point where it makes you lose. And that is the point where you really start getting information. Because someone actually said, oh, you shouldn't play to lose in friendlies, you should play to learn. The other day, I tried using forward smash, and because it worked a few times in a row, I now know in which situations forward smash might work. Which is true, but that information is so incomplete. And that is part of the reason why playing to learn can be the wrong mindset, and why I argue you to play to lose and to understand what losing does for you. Because when you say, oh yeah, I used forward smash a few times and now I know in which situations to use it, that's wrong. You're just straight up wrong, because you haven't lost for using it yet. So you know in which situations it's possible, but you never know when you're going too far. In other words, you need to push your limits more, and you need to figure out the point at which you lose. So in other words, your goal literally is to lose. Does information only go into your memory if you lose an interaction? No, that's not really what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you can theory craft a lot, but by actually losing, you have practical information, like a practical example of your theory, which contains more information than your theory can, because Smash has too many variables to theory craft everything perfectly. So in theory, I could be like, you know, I'm playing Shulk. In theory, I should go into Speed Monado in neutral. So that was my theory for the longest time. Where in neutral, I go to Speed Monado. If I don't have Speed Monado, I play defensively. And then when I started doing it, I figured out that things were going wrong. Why were things going wrong? Because after the Speed Monado wins, nothing happened. In other words, I needed like Buster or Smash to follow it up to have proper reward. So what that comes down to is that I had a theory, and I tried it out, and I figured out why, you know, I tried to push it as far as I could, and at a certain point I started losing, and that is the information that's important. I lost for jumping too much as Ren, right? So I then say, oh, I jumped too much here or there, and I lost because of it, so I'm gonna mix it up. Yeah, so that is kind of the point where I'm getting at. But the thing is, you gotta find, again, like we mentioned in the previous coaching session, you gotta find the variables, you gotta find the context. And that is kind of why pushing yourself and pushing your limits is so good. Because only when you push your limits do you have a practical example, and based on the practical examples, if you have like hundreds of them, you can then isolate the variables that make it a losing, you know, that make that point the point at which you lose. So finally, I guess this is my final point. There's a difference between going into a game wanting to lose and wanting to learn. And we briefly touched upon this, but I basically think like if you want to learn, you're ignoring some of the advantages that wanting to lose has. Like for example, like I said, just finding the breaking point. But also, you're mentally focusing on losing and what you get out of a loss. And the mentality difference there is so different, right? So I know plenty of my students that try to learn in friendlies, but then when they get in a tournament, they get nervous as hell. Why? Because it's no longer a learning environment. So playing to learn doesn't really carry over to a tournament because people want to perform. But when you play to lose, you get used to losing. And you start accepting the loss and making it part of your process. PPMD thinks that losing, like learning to lose, is one of the hardest things to learn in the game. And by focusing on losing, you get better at handling loss and turning it into productivity. So that's what it comes down to, is that you need to stop seeing learning and losing as two separate things because they're intrinsically connected. And even if you can learn things without losing, someone else lost to learn that same thing. And you're building off of their knowledge. And because of the variables, like the amount of variables in Smash, you're inevitably gonna have to lose to learn. Because there will never be a practical example that will perfectly represent your theory. Unless it's like a very set play situation, like for example, Let's Traps. A better TLDR is you should play friendlies to learn more than to beat your opponents. Trying something and seeing potential or not seeing potential. See, so this is missing the point. Nate, you're missing the point. I'm sorry, dude. Like, it's different. Playing to learn is different than playing to lose. And yes, you can learn by like pushing your limits, but if you're doing that, you're literally looking for the moment in which you've reached your limit and you lose. In other words, you're playing to lose. So it's that different. A bit weird, but how would I play to lose versus players way better than me? That's a good question. I think even against players that are way better than you, I think actually against players that are way better than you, you have a better time playing to lose. Because against players way better than you, you find your limits way faster. So say you're in disadvantage and you're like, I'm gonna try to see if I can swing out here, and they punish you instantly. And then, you know, you found your limit. You've found the point at which you lose. So anyway, that's my rant. That's my rant on playing to lose. And I have to say, like, making